We are now just 6 days away from Election Day, and already more than 53 million Americans have cast their ballots in early voting. Vice President Harris and former President Donald Trump are both on the campaign trail, making their final pitches to voters in several key battleground states. The vice president started her day in North Carolina for a campaign event in Raleigh. During the stop, she warned rallygoers of what she described as Trump's quest for unchecked power and the need to move on from his divisive rhetoric.
We know we have an opportunity in this election to turn the page on a decade of Donald Trump, who has been trying to keep us divided and afraid of each other. We know that is who he is, but North Carolina, that is not who we are.
Following the stop in Raleigh, Harris goes to Pennsylvania for a rally in the state's capital. From there, she'll travel to Madison, Wisconsin for a campaign event later this evening. For his part, Trump is also on the trail in some battleground states, many of them the same. He is holding a rally for voters in Rocky Mount, North Carolina, before closing out the day in Green Bay, Wisconsin. During his stop in North Carolina, the former president volleyed several hits at President Biden and Vice President Harris. He also responded to what the president and White House had to say about Mr. Biden's comments, where opponents said he called Trump's supporters garbage.
My response to Joe and Kamala is very simple. You can't lead America if you don't love Americans. You just can't. And you can't be president if you hate the American people. And there's a lot of hatred there.
Let's bring in now CBS News senior White House correspondent Weijia Jiang in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. You see behind her, the vice president is going to be speaking this afternoon. They're all prepped and ready. So let's just start there, Weijia. What should we expect to hear from Harris as she looks to close out her campaign?
Lana, we are less than 1 week away from Election Day, so I think that we will be hearing her make her closing argument, which, of course, she laid out in detail last night on the National Mall, essentially telling voters that they have a real choice here, trying to make sure they understand the contrast between her and Trump. She continues to say that he will come into a second term with a list of enemies. She says she will come in with a list of things to do. She also talked at length about abortion rights and immigration because I think she wants to talk about the substance and the policies and how she can separate herself from Trump in those ways as well. But Lana, at the end of the day, it's become clear that her closing message to voters is a warning about what would happen, she says, if there were another Trump presidency. So, you know, in some ways, she was making the case against Trump as much as she was making the case for herself. And I expect we will hear much more of that here in Pennsylvania.
And we did now in these final days, final hours, she's finding herself having to talk about racist comments that were made at a Trump rally and President Biden's response to those comments, things that she doesn't actually want to be talking about. So let's just go back and talk and let's set the stage for our viewers. There was this racist joke about Puerto Rico that was made by a comedian at Trump's Madison Square Garden rally over the weekend. Here's what he had to say.
And just the other day, a speaker at his rally called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. Well, let me tell you something. I don't know the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
So you hear the president responding to that comedian calling Puerto Rico garbage. Now, the White House transcript says that there was an apostrophe after the word supporter, reflecting that the president was talking about the comedian who made the joke. But obviously, that's not how the Trump people are taking it. So earlier today, Vice President Harris also had to weigh in. She was distancing herself from the controversial remarks. Here's what she had to say.
First of all, he clarified his comments, but let me be clear, I strongly disagree with any criticism of people based on who they vote for. You heard my speech last night and continuously throughout my career. I believe that the work that I do is about representing all the people, whether they support me or not. And as President of the United States, I will be a president for all Americans, whether you vote for me or not.
So given all of that, given the echoes back to basket of deplorables, how concerned is the Harris campaign right now that the remarks made by someone else, by Biden, that might isolate Americans and hurt her campaign?
So that is a really critical point, Lana, because when you're talking about Hillary Clinton in 2016 in the basket of deplorables, she was the nominee, and she left no room for interpretation about what she meant. She said it, she owned it, and then she had to live with any consequences that came after that. This is a very different situation. This is not the nominee, Harris, who is making the remarks. It is, of course, the president, who is very close to Harris in many ways, even though she has been distancing herself from him during the campaign. And I think her response really says it all, because she is aware that there is a lot of various interpretations of what Biden said. So she came out, she said, look, he clarified what he meant to say, which, by the way, the president himself almost immediately tweeted to clarify that he wasn't talking about all Trump supporters, but one Trump supporter, the comedian, specifically. But today, Harris also acknowledged that if for some reason you did think that Biden was calling all of Trump supporters garbage, she said, let me be very clear. I condemn that. I do not think it's right to, categorize anyone based on their political beliefs. And she reiterated the message, Lana, that she was trying to make last night, which is that I will be a president for everybody. And I think what's really important here that you mentioned as well is that this is the last thing she wants to be talking about, right? She just had this massive speech right in front of the White House where she wanted people to be able to visualize her as the commander-in-chief with the White House behind her. The crowd was massive, 75,000 people, and she really was able to hit home a lot of the points that she has wanted to for the duration of her campaign. And so now she has to spend time talking about what President Biden said. So at best, Lana, this is a distraction that she did not want to have to deal with.
Yeah, on the defense instead of the offense in the final days. Weijia, thank you so much. Well, for more on the Trump campaign now, we're going to turn to CBS News political director Fin Gómez. So, Fin, if not for perhaps what is an unforced error by President Biden, the focus would have been on still what this supporter of President Trump had to say, which was really terrible about Puerto Rico. And Trump, for his part, he was saying that he's done more for the Latino community than any other president. How is this message all being received right now? And how is the Trump campaign feeling about undecided Latino voters, given that whether you're uncertain about what Biden said, there's no question about what this Trump supporter said at the podium at the invitation of the Trump campaign?
Yeah, Lana, when I spoke to a Trump source earlier in the week, they said that they were concerned that the backlash over this inflammatory, frankly, racist joke at Madison Square Garden would have legs, that it could have an impact in places maybe like Pennsylvania. As you know, Lana, in Pennsylvania, it is a tight race. In our latest polling, it showed a dead heat, even race. But in that state, in that critical state, where a little bit can go a long way. If you're looking at a couple thousand votes here, a couple thousand votes there, especially in that center part of the state, in that Latino corridor just north of Philly, they believe that this can have an impact there. This is what the Trump campaign source told me, but also the Harris campaign source within that campaign told me that they also felt that this could potentially move the dial. Look, we won't know until we know. We won't know until Election Day, until all the votes are counted. But when it's a battle of margins and this close, Lana, this could have an impact.
Well, and that's exactly it, Finn. This is such a close race. All of the CBS polling indicates that even a minor swing in any of these groups, in any of these battleground states, could make a tremendous difference in the outcome. I'm just wondering if you've been talking to the Trump campaign about their internal polling and how they're feeling right now.
Look, I've spoken to both campaigns about their internal polling, and what they're seeing is what we're seeing, Lana. What we're seeing is just a very tight, historically tight race. I mean, this is the closest race in modern political history, and at this point in the race. And so what you're seeing in internal polling and what you're seeing in external polling, including our own, is that in these key battleground states, those 7, it is absolutely a margin of error race. But also, if you look at where the candidates are campaigning, Lana, it just they're both going to North Carolina. They're both going to Wisconsin. They both feel that their presence there could make that difference. And so where they go is probably where they believe is either the closest or where they believe that they can move the needle. But it is historically a very tight race.
All right, and we will wait to see exactly what America decides. Gómez,
yes,
thank you.
6 days. 6 days, Lana.
We'll see you here.